Good evening. Welcome to another segment of Small Talk with Centers for New Horizon. I'm your host, Edmund Hall, and this is my co-host,
Devin Eccles.
And today we'll be talking with you about protesting, using protesting as a tool for community development. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can call us in at 312-738-1060. Once again, that's 312-738-1060. Or you can see us at the website Centers for New Horizon at www.cnh.org. Once again, that's www.cnh.org. H as in horse, C as in Carl, N as in Nancy. www.cnh.org. You can call us in at 773-373-5700. And we're located at 4150 South King Drive, Chicago, Illinois, 60653.
So, can you tell us about protesting? Tell us what protesting is?
Well, protesting is people protest for rights and things that they feel strongly about. Protesting has been a part of the African American culture, especially in the 1960s. To protest is to express an objection to what someone has said or done, declare firmly and empathetically in the face of or stated or implied doubt or in response to an accusation. Today's guest will be Mr. Johnny Owens, and he will talk with us about protesting.
But before we get to Johnny Owens, have there ever been an experience that you've been in with protesting?
Yes, I feel like it has been. Yes, it was like my junior year in college. We had signed a petition to get later lunches. So it was this place called The Grill, and we wanted food later because the cafeteria closed around 6 o'clock. So we wanted later food, so we signed a petition to get later food, and now The Grill is open to around 7 o'clock and close at 10 from Monday through Saturday. So it was small, but we got it done.
I mean, any protest is a big protest, big or small, it's still a protest.
Yeah.
So, me, one time I actually did have a protest. I was actually going for the high school library, and the library was going to close down. And this library, we was actually able to save it, and our teacher, she was going to get cut off, but she actually did end up making it, and she still has a job now as we speak.
That's good. But some more examples of protesters are the Montgomery bus boycott, the 1968 Olympics, the marches on Washington, the Boston Tea Party, and there's a lot more. But again, if you have any questions, call us in at 312-738-1060. 312-738-1060. Or you can go to our website, which is www.cnh.org, or you can call us in at 773-373-5700. Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is Johnny Owens. I'm the Director of Community Building for Centers for New Horizons. Primarily, my job is to help people develop and change conditions in their community for the better.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of questions for you, Mr. Owens.
Sure.
How do you prepare for a protest?
Well, you prepare by, first of all, getting comfortable with the idea that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get what you want to change to change. You want to make sure you've got others involved. You want to make sure that you research the institution or individual that you're going to be protesting. You also want to make sure that and be certain that what you're asking for is doable. A lot of times we go after things to be changed that are actually not doable by the person visual that we want to change. So those are some of the things you definitely want to do.
All right, so how do you determine what to protest?
Well, one way of determining is to, first of all, understand have you exhausted all of the remedies? Have you went through and given this person every opportunity to come to your side of the issue? And that's one thing. The second thing I think that's really important is that are the people around you prepared to do that? Are they prepared in terms of training and the way they think to engage in a protest? And I think the final thing is that are you mentally prepared to engage in something that is public, and that you're going to be you're probably going to be attacked by others who will say that you're overdoing it, or you're just being unreasonable.
Speaking of being attacked by others, how do you address a crazy civilian during a protest?
Well, one of the things you always want to make sure you do is to have a group of your supporters or your leaders ready to address that kind of situation once it occurs. Whether that be an unruly, vociferous individual who comes out of the blue, then you want to make sure your people are prepared to either shout that person down or sort of reasonably escort them out of the room, things like that. So you prepare basically by preparing your people.
Yeah. And so how do you know when to stop a protest after all is said and done?
Well, the main thing, the main lesson, or the main moment to stop is when you won. When you won the issue, okay? You don't want to go overboard in terms of continually attacking someone when they've expressed a decision to come over to your side of the issue. We've got a sort of a slogan which that you want to escalate, but then you want to de-escalate. Mm-hmm. So you want to begin to, at some point, once that person is coming to your position, to say, okay, well now we can be allies. But you also want that person to always know that you're prepared to ramp it back up if for some reason they've not. They don't follow through on what their demand is. Sometimes someone will come over to your position just to, get the tension to settle down, and knowing that it may be hard for you to get people excited and willing to go out there again.
Yeah. So, can you explain more about what you do at centers? What do you do at centers?
Well, primarily my job is to work with community residents as well as our clients to, develop, strategies for community improvement that they're interested in pursuing and helping them do that. For example, we have a community garden which resulted from a concern that many of our constituents had around having fresh produce and available. So as a result, we created a community garden, and we are actually pursuing issues around food justice at this time.
So going back to protesting, people feel like protesting, revolutions and rebellion are the same thing. So what's the difference, if there is any? Well,
actually there isn't very much difference. I mean, protest and rebellion, anytime you're rebelling, you're saying that I don't agree with what the status quo is all about. I want to see something change. That is rebelling against something, and sort of protest, revolution is the very same thing. You protesting is a means by which you're expressing not only to the person that you're protesting against, but to the general public that, look, this isn't right. We want this to change.
It looks like we have a caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question. I know that you're speaking about protests right now, and I was wondering, when it comes down to centers, with you being a business that is community-based, how do you make a decision on what it is that you're willing to protest and things that you think you may need to stay away from?
Well, that's always a very difficult area to deal with. But in my experience with centers, we've always managed to address issues that were that didn't get us involved in those kinds of dilemmas, you might say. We've addressed issues that are clearly right and haven't had to deal with compromising our relationships with those who support us. And that's been my experience. The other thing that we have looked at doing is actually creating a subsidiary that's able to be a little bit more aggressive in the issues that it pursues. It's called the Bronzeville Alliance. And in that way, we are looking at, as we look at the future, we hope to be able to be a bit more aggressive going forward.
Did that answer your question? Well, thank you, Carla. I got another question for you. Do you think this new generation lacks structure, leadership, and direction?
No, I don't. I don't. I think that, and if you're referring to some of the protest movements that's going on right now, it's protests, organizing large groups of people to address very difficult issues is an art. It's not a science. It's very difficult to do, and I admire the courage and stick-to-itiveness that I'm seeing take place out there. I admire some of the work that I see being done, and as I said, it's a very difficult thing to do, but I think that they're handling it very well.
Well, speaking of work being done, can you tell us more about the work you've done in protesting with Senate?
Okay. Well, one of the issues that I feel most good about, it was a relatively small issue, but it was one that I felt strongly about in relation to a corner store being located near a high school in our community. And the corner store actually had some advertising that was, what I felt very negative in relation to, our young people attending school right near there. They had signs, advertising, promoting alcohol, and it was a very unkept store. We actually organized a number of the students from the school and led a protest at the store. We got some press, and they actually changed that situation. And as a result, we've gotten enough attention around the whole question of healthy eating in that area, where we actually have now, there's now some new food stores moving into the area, and it looks like the area is going to be moving toward improvement, hopefully, and continues.
It looks like we have another caller. Caller, go ahead with your question. I guess not caller, but if you do want to call in, you can call in at 312-738-1060 if you have any questions or comments or concerns about protesting. Once again, that number is 312-738-1060. And another question for you, Mr. Owens, is how do you feel, or what do you think about silent protests?
It can be an interesting technique if it's done properly and people understand what and why you're doing it. One of the things about protest, I think, is that's so important, is that you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, that you're communicating to the community at large, the people at large, what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that that it's in line with their values. So, a silent protest can be an effective tool if it's communicated why you're doing it, and how it can be, and how it's an effective technique in this particular situation.
So, looks like we have a caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to know, how do you know who to pick to protest with you?
How do you know how to pick who to protest with you?
Yeah.
Well, at different stages of the protest movement, you want different types of people. At the very beginning, you want to bring around you people who are very committed and clear, logical thinkers. And as the movement grows, you need different types of talent around. You need kind of talent that's going to, people like who's going to show up on time, for example. Simple things like showing up on time. People who can listen to instruction. People who's willing to take instruction. And then at the very, outside level, you need people who are going to come and just be a part of the action. People to occupy the seats or whatever, in terms of creating some kind of crowd and evidence that there's other people on your side.
Did that answer your question? I hope it answered your question. But another question I have for you is, what do you find to be the most effective method of protesting? Marches, boycotts, etc.?
Well, again, protesting, organizing, conducting movements, it's an art. It's not a science. So to answer that question, a simple way of answering that is whatever seems to be more effective at a particular time. Boycotts can be effective if there's an economic situation and the institution you're protesting is economically vulnerable. Let's say you're protesting a store for the kind of things they're selling. Well, if that store is already, have a fine line between, profit and loss, then they're not going to be able to stand a boycott too long, right? So you may be able to get away with boycotting for a week and before they'll capitulate. But if it's a store that's well financed, they can stand up to a boycott for longer than maybe you can, right? If you think about the Montgomery bus boycott, they had the boycott for almost a year, if not more, in order to get the city to capitulate. That's a long time for people to go having to, find alternative means to work. Marches can be effective if there's a situation where maybe people are want to see that kind of visual involvement of other people and that sort of thing. So again, it's an art. It's not a science, and that's what makes this very challenging work. There's no textbook.
Well, it looks like we have another caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hello. I wanted to know, what were the downsides of protesting?
Well, one of the downsides is that you could lose. So you've got to be, I think that, you've got to be prepared to take risks. And not everybody can do that. A lot of times people want to be assured that everything is going to go exactly the right way and that sort of thing. And that's difficult for some people. Another downside, I think, is that, you may start something that gets out of your control, and you're not able to sort of keep, focused if you go into it unprepared. That's why preparation and thinking strategically, I think, is some of the most important and most critical things you can do. Although, there has been situations where spontaneous anger develops and you've got to do something with it quickly. So that's the best way for me to answer that question.
And for me, for any protest, we're going to still have nasty food. Or we won't be eating no more. So fill our bellies at night. But another question I have for you is, do you think that the protesting that this new generation is doing is it working? I
think it is working. I think that if you're referring to some of the protests around, police brutality that's taking place, I think it's working and working very well. I think that there's never been a time when that issue has been more in the public, in front of the public's attention. So I think that they're being very effective.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, comments, or concern, can you please call in at 312-738-1060. Looks like somebody heard me because we have another caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to know, how do you deal with a failed protest?
Could you repeat that? Did you hear?
I wanted to know, how do you deal with a failed protest?
Filmed?
Failed.
Field?
Field.
F-A-I-L-E-D. Failed.
Oh, failed. A failed protest.
Okay. Well, I think one thing you want to do is try to draw some of the good that took place. There's very little that happens that's all bad, okay? And sometimes even if you lose, there's some good things that come out of it. And there's also, the conversation you want to have about, even though we've lost at this stage, what can we do to recapture? You might lose the battle, but you haven't lost the war. So you always want to think of this as a war, and that the protests and actions are stages in that war, our individual battles. So if you lose the battle, try to make sure you don't lose the war.
It's a learning experience,
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you fail a test, you fail that test. Well, you can fail a quiz, but the test
Mm-hmm.
is what you're trying to accomplish. So you fail that one quiz, but you keep on passing the next ones, you can eventually pass the test.
And you spend time with your group. You develop the discipline of reflection after everything that you do, so that they understand you're going to take some moments to reflect on what did we do good, what did we do right, what did we not do, why did we fail, what did we not think of, that kind of thing.
So once again, if you have any question, comments, or concern, can you call us in at 312-738-1060. And you can look us up on our website, Centers for New Horizon, at cnh.org, www.cnh.org. Once again, that's www.cnh.org. We're located at 4150 South King Drive, Chicago, Illinois, 60653. You can call us in at that office at 773-373-5700. Once again, that number is 773-373-5700. I would like to thank you for coming in, Mr. Owens.
Mm-hmm.
This was
It's my pleasure.
This was a nice,
Yeah, I enjoyed this.
nice conversation. It was cool, and I'm gonna go back to the overhead if you ain't hear me, because you can call us in at 773-373-5700. If you have any questions or comments or concerns about Centers for New Horizon, just call us in. You can come in at 4150 South King Drive, Chicago, Illinois. You can visit this website that's right here. It's www.cnh.org. www.cnh.org. C as in Charles, N as in Nancy, H as in horse.org. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter at Centers 2.0. I'll go back, Ms. Eccles. Well, that was our show for today. We would like to wrap it up for you. And
To the next horizon.
until the next horizons.
End it.
into the next horizons.